I am Melanie, 35, sitting in my executive office at Logitech Industries, staring at the application on my desk. 10 years ago, my parents sold my car without permission to fund my brother Ethan's MBA. Your CR paid for his future. Mom smiled as I watched strangers drive away with my pride and joy. Now, fate has a twisted sense of humor. Tomorrow, my brother walks into this office for his dream job interview. He has no idea I am the CEO. Before I tell you how I went from having my car sold to becoming CEO, let me know where you are watching from and hit that like and subscribe button. Trust me, you will want to stick around for when my brother walked into my office for that interview. Growing up in a middle-class neighborhood in Columbus, Ohio, I was always the academically gifted child. Straight A's came naturally to me. But somehow my achievements always seemed to be overshadowed by whatever my younger brother Ethan was doing. If I brought home a perfect report card, my parents would nod and say, "That is nice, honey." But when Ethan brought home BS and CS, there would be celebrations and trips for ice cream. "He tries so hard," my mother Laura would say, ruffling his hair affectionately. "Not everyone finds school as easy as you do, Melanie." My father Thomas, an accountant at a local firm, had always dreamed of having a son follow in his footsteps. From the time Ethan could talk, Dad would introduce him as my future business partner. I remember standing there, invisible, as though my dreams did not matter. By 16, I realized if I wanted anything in life, I would have to get it myself. I started working part-time at the local library, then added weekend shifts at a coffee shop. For 2 years, I saved every penny. No movies with friends, no new clothes, no frivolous spending. While other kids my age were enjoying their adolescence, I was working 30 hours a week on top of maintaining my perfect GPA. The day I bought my car was the proudest moment of my young life. It was nothing fancy, just a used 2005 Honda Civic with 70,000 miles on it, but it was mine. $5,000. All earned through my sweat and sacrifice. I remember the feeling of the keys in my palm, the smell of the air freshener hanging from the rearview mirror, the sensation of freedom as I drove it home. "You could have asked us to help," my father said when I pulled into the driveway. "We would have contributed something." But I knew better. Money in our house always seemed to find its way to Ethan's needs and wants. New gaming system? Ethan needed it to decompress from academic pressure. Expensive sneakers? He needs to fit in with his peers. Meanwhile, I wore second-hand clothes and used library computers to write my papers. The only person who truly saw me was my grandfather, William. Dad's father was a self-made man who had built a small construction business from nothing. He recognized the same drive in me. "You remind me of myself," he would tell me during our Sunday visits. "These kids today, they want everything handed to them. But not you, Mel. You understand the value of hard work." When Grandpa William was diagnosed with cancer during my senior year of high school, it hit our family hard. Not just emotionally, but financially. Hospital bills started piling up. My parents dipped into their savings, and the stress began to show. Dad started working overtime, and Mom seemed perpetually worried. One night, I overheard them talking in hushed tones at the kitchen table. "We cannot afford both the medical bills and Ethan's college deposits," Mom whispered. "Something has to give. He has his heart set on that business program," Dad replied. "It would crush him to go to community college. We promised him." I stood in the hallway, invisible again. No one had promised me anything for college. It was always assumed I would figure it out on my own. My best friend Ashley was the only one who validated my feelings. During lunch breaks at school, I would vent to her about the disparity in how my brother and I were treated. "It is not fair," she would say, outraged on my behalf. "You work twice as hard and get half the recognition." If I were you, I would be screaming. But I did not scream. Instead, I channeled my frustration into determination. I applied for every scholarship I could find. Prepared for a future I would build myself. My car became my sanctuary. Every time I got behind the wheel, I felt a sense of accomplishment. On weekends, I would drive to the hospital to visit Grandpa William. His condition was deteriorating, but his mind remained sharp. "Do not let anyone take away what you have earned," he told me during one visit. His hand frail, but his grip still surprisingly strong. "In this world, respect is earned. Remember that." I did not know then how prophetic his words would be, or how soon they would be tested. As graduation approached, the tension in our house grew. One evening, I came home to find my parents sitting at the kitchen table with financial paperwork spread out before them. My mother was dabbing at her eyes with a tissue. "We will find a way," my father was saying. "Ethan deserves his shot at that MBA program. We just need to be creative with financing." I slipped away unnoticed, a familiar feeling settling in my stomach. Something was coming. Something that would test my resolve in ways I could not yet imagine. The day it happened started like any other. I had gone to school, attended my classes, and worked a 4-hour shift at the library. When I pulled into our driveway at 6:30, I noticed an unfamiliar car parked out front. A middle-aged man in a polo shirt was walking around my Honda, jotting notes on a clipboard. A cold sensation spread through my chest as I parked on the street and approached. "Can I help you?" I asked, keys clutched tightly in my hand. "Oh, you must be Melanie," the man said with a friendly smile. "Your parents are inside. I am just finishing up the appraisal." Appraisal? The word hung in the air like a threat. Inside. I found my parents sitting in the living room with a woman in a business suit. Ethan was there too, scrolling through his phone with affected nonchalance. "What is going on?" I demanded. Though deep down, I already knew. Mom glanced at Dad before speaking. "Sweetie, we wanted to talk to you about this, but everything happened so quickly. Mr. Peterson is interested in buying your car." "My car is not for sale," I said firmly, feeling my heart beginning to race. Dad cleared his throat. "Mel, the family is in a difficult position right now. With Grandpa's medical bills and other financial obligations, we need to make some sacrifices." "So sacrifice something else," I shot back. "Not my car that I bought with my own money." A tense silence fell over the room. The woman in the suit, who introduced herself as a financial advisor, excused herself to give us privacy. But Mr. Peterson, the prospective buyer, lingered in the doorway. "I can give you $6,000 for it," he said. "It is in excellent condition for its age." $6,000. $1,000 profit on my investment. But that was not the point. "No," I said again, louder this time. "You cannot sell what is not yours to sell." Mom's expression hardened. "Melanie, you're still a minor. The car is registered in our name because you could not legally own it yourself at 17. The technicality hit me like a slap. They were right, legally speaking. When I had purchased the car, Dad had put it in his name since I was underage. "This is not about legalities," I said, my voice starting to shake. "That car represents 2 years of my life. Every free hour I had went into earning that money. And we are proud of your work ethic," Dad said, using his reasonable accountant voice. "But right now, we need that money for the family." "What family emergency requires exactly the amount my car is worth?" I asked, suspicion growing. "Is Grandpa worse? Does he need a special treatment?" My parents exchanged glances again. And in that moment, I knew. This was not about Grandpa. "Tell her," Ethan finally said, looking up from his phone. "She is going to find out anyway." Mom sighed. "Ethan has been accepted to the business program at Wharton. The deposit and application fees are due next week, and with all our other expenses, we just do not have the funds right now." The room seemed to tilt around me. "You are selling my car to pay for his college." "His MBA," Dad corrected, as if that made it better. "It is an investment in his future. In the family's future." I turned to look at Ethan, expecting to see at least some discomfort, some acknowledgement of the injustice. Instead, he gave a small shrug. "Sorry, sis. They said it was the only way." "And what about my future?" I asked, tears stinging my eyes. How am I supposed to get to work? To school? I need that car. You can take the bus, Mom suggested. Lots of students do. And once Ethan graduates and gets a good position, he will help the family. Maybe even help you with college. I laughed bitterly. When have you ever asked him to sacrifice anything for me? This is not about you versus him, Dad said sternly. This is about what is best for the family as a whole. No, I countered. This is about him. It is always about him. Mom stood up and placed her hands on my shoulders. Her eyes were sympathetic but determined. Sweetie, sometimes we have to make hard choices. Your car paid for his future. Someday you will understand that we did what we had to do. I shrugged away from her touch. Did you even consider asking me? Or were you just going to let me come home one day and find my car gone? We knew you would react this way, Dad said. You have always been so stubborn. Mr. Peterson cleared his throat awkwardly from the doorway. Should I come back another time? No, my father said firmly. We are proceeding with the sale. He turned to me. Melanie, I need the keys. I clutched them tighter, the metal biting into my palm. This is not right. The papers are already signed, he said. Do not make this harder than it needs to be. In that moment, something inside me broke. Not just my heart, but my trust in the people who were supposed to protect me. I dropped the keys on the coffee table, the sound unnaturally loud in the tense room. I will never forgive you for this, I said quietly. Any of you. I turned and walked out, ignoring my mother calling my name. I kept walking until I reached the park 3 blocks away, then collapsed onto a bench and finally let the tears come. Later that evening, I called Grandpa William from a payphone, my voice still thick with emotion as I told him what had happened. Those damn fools, he muttered. They always did favor that boy. Listen to me, Melanie. This is not the end for you. It is just fuel for your fire. His words helped, but the pain remained. The next morning, I watched from my bedroom window as Mr. Peterson drove away in my Honda. Mom tried to give me some of the money for college, she said, but I refused to take it. If it is for my college, then put it in an account in my name. I challenged her. Otherwise, we both know where it is really going. She could not meet my eyes. The next few weeks were brutal. Taking the bus added almost 2 hours to my daily commute. Sometimes I would miss the last bus home and have to walk 3 miles after a long shift. My grades began to suffer as exhaustion took its toll. Through it all, I nursed my anger, letting it harden into resolve. Ethan walked around the house with a new confidence, talking excitedly about his future at Wharton, seemingly oblivious to what his opportunity had cost me. One night, alone in my room, I made a vow to myself. I would succeed on my own terms, without their help, without their connections, without their belief in me. And someday, they would regret underestimating me. I just did not know then how completely that vow would shape my future. The day after graduation, I moved out of my parents' house. With the money I had saved from my jobs, I rented a tiny studio apartment near the community college where I had enrolled. It was all I could afford. A single room with a kitchenette and a bathroom so small you could brush your teeth while showering. My new life was grueling. I took on 2 jobs, working as a barista from 5 a.m. to noon, then as an office assistant at a small logistics company from 1 to 6. After work, I would attend evening classes, often not returning home until after 10 at night. Weekends were for studying and picking up extra shifts. The bus became my second home. I learned to use the commute time efficiently, reading textbooks or completing assignments while swaying with the motion of the vehicle. Some days, I was so tired I would fall asleep and miss my stop, adding another 30 minutes to my journey as I waited for the bus going in the opposite direction. 3 months into this punishing routine, Grandpa William passed away. The call came from Mom on a rare afternoon when I had a few hours free. He went peacefully, she said, her voice thick with grief. He was asking for you. The funeral was the first time I had seen my family since moving out. Ethan was home from his first semester at Wharton, dressed in an expensive suit I knew my parents had purchased for him. He tried to make conversation, asking about my classes and jobs, but I kept my responses brief and cold. A week after the funeral, I received a letter from the family attorney. Grandpa William had left me $5,000 in his will, the exact amount my car had been sold for. The note attached read simply, "For Melanie's future. She will know how to use it wisely." I cried for the first time since the day they took my car. Not just for the loss of my grandfather, but for the vindication his final act represented. He had seen me. He had understood. Many would have used that money to buy another car, and the temptation was strong. But I remembered Grandpa's faith in my judgment and made a different choice. I used the inheritance to pay for a full year of tuition and books, allowing me to drop one of my jobs and focus more on my studies. That decision changed everything. With more time to dedicate to school, my grades improved dramatically. I made connections with professors who recognized my potential. One of them, Dr. Harper, recommended me for a competitive scholarship that would cover my remaining time at community college. "You have a remarkable mind for systems and processes," she told me. "The way you analyze inefficiencies and propose solutions is exceptional." With the scholarship secured, I transferred to Ohio State University to complete my bachelor's degree in business administration with a focus on supply chain management. The commute was longer, but I was no longer working 60 hours a week just to survive. During my final year at OSU, I applied for an entry-level position at Logitech Industries, a Fortune 500 company known for its innovative approaches to global logistics. The starting salary was modest, but the company had a reputation for promoting from within. My first day at Logitech coincided with a major system failure that had halted operations across 3 distribution centers. As the newest member of the team, I sat quietly in the emergency meeting, listening to executives debate solutions. When there was a pause, I raised my hand. "Excuse me," I said, my voice steadier than I felt. "I think I might see the issue." The room fell silent as all eyes turned to me. For a moment, I was back in my parents' living room, fighting for something that was mine. But this time, I was not going to be silenced. I explained my observation, a simple but critical flaw in how the new software interfaced with the legacy systems. The IT director looked skeptical but agreed to try my suggestion. Within hours, the systems were back online. "Where did you learn to spot that kind of issue?" my supervisor asked afterward. "Necessity," I answered truthfully. When you have limited resources, you learn to identify the most efficient solutions. That incident put me on the radar of upper management. I was assigned to increasingly important projects, each time exceeding expectations. Meanwhile, through occasional calls with Mom, I learned that Ethan was struggling in his MBA program. The rigorous coursework and competitive environment were not what he had expected. He had always been academically average, coasting on charm and our parents' unwavering support. "He just needs to find his footing," Mom would say defensively. "These top programs are very demanding." I would make non-committal sounds of agreement, even as I was excelling in my own career without their emotional or financial backing. For years into my time at Logitech, I met Caroline Jensen, the company's chief operations officer. She had requested my presence at a strategy meeting after reading my proposal for restructuring our Asia-Pacific distribution network. "Your analysis is impressive," she said after the meeting. "You see patterns and opportunities that others miss." Caroline became my mentor, guiding my career with tough love and strategic advice. Under her guidance, I earned my MBA part-time through Logitech's employee education program, paid for entirely by my own salary and company tuition assistance. The irony was not lost on me. While Ethan had been given my car to fund his education, I had built mine from nothing, working full-time while completing my degree with distinction. 5 years after joining Logitech, I faced my first major career crisis. A competitor offered me a position with a 40% salary increase. The money was tempting, especially considering I was still paying off student loans. But Caroline advised me to consider the long game. "They are buying your skills," she said. "Here, we are investing in your future." I decided to stay, negotiating instead for a promotion and modest raise. That loyalty would later prove to be one of the smartest decisions of my career. On my 30th birthday, I finally allowed myself a significant indulgence. I walked into a Honda dealership and purchased a brand new Accord, top of the line with every available feature. As I signed the paperwork, I thought about that used Civic from all those years ago and how its loss had set me on this path. Sometimes, the most painful betrayals lead to the greatest transformations. The 5 years following my 30th birthday were a blur of achievement and advancement. My career accelerated at a pace that surprised even me, each promotion bringing new challenges and opportunities. At 31, I spearheaded the development of a proprietary logistics tracking system that reduced delivery times by 22% and saved Logitech over $12 million annually. The success of that project earned me a position as the youngest director in company history. You have a gift for seeing the big picture while managing the minute details, the chief technology officer told me during my performance review. That is exceedingly rare. My personal life evolved alongside my professional one. I met Daniel at a charity gala hosted by Logitech. Unlike previous men I had dated who often felt threatened by my ambition, Daniel was secure in his own success as an architect. He admired my drive and supported my long hours without complaint. "You remind me of my mother," he told me on our third date. She built her law practice while raising 3 kids on her own. "People like you do not understand the meaning of impossible." With Daniel, I found a partnership based on mutual respect and shared values. We moved in together after a year, creating a home that became my sanctuary from the demands of corporate life. During this time, my contact with my family remained sporadic and surface level. Mom would call every few weeks, always starting with pleasantries before inevitably turning the conversation to Ethan. "He is between positions right now," she would say. "The job market is so competitive, especially for someone with his qualifications." I learned that Ethan had graduated from Wharton, but his career had been a series of false starts and disappointments. He had held 4 different positions in 3 years, never staying anywhere long enough to build a reputation or gain meaningful experience. Dad would occasionally get on the phone, asking vague questions about my office job, never quite grasping that I was now managing a department of 60 people with a budget of millions. They knew I was doing well, but the extent of my success remained obscure to them, partly because I never volunteered the information. At 33, I faced the biggest challenge of my career when Logitech acquired a struggling competitor. I was tasked with integrating their outdated systems with ours, a project many deemed impossible without significant service disruptions. For 3 months, I worked 14-hour days, 7 days a week. I led a team of engineers and analysts through countless simulations and test runs. The pressure was immense, with the CEO himself checking in on our progress daily. The night before the integration went live, I stayed at the office until 2 a.m., reviewing every detail one final time. As I walked to my car in the deserted parking garage, I called Daniel. "What if it fails?" I asked, voicing my deepest fear. "What if I have miscalculated somewhere?" "Then you will fix it," he said simply. "That is what you do, Melanie. You solve problems. You rebuild. You persevere." His faith in me was a stark contrast to my childhood, where expectations for me had always been minimal. The integration launched the next morning without a single hiccup, cementing my reputation as a miracle worker within the company. 3 months later, I was promoted to Senior Vice President of Global Operations, reporting directly to Caroline, who is now President. The promotion came with a corner office, a substantial salary increase, and stock options that instantly made me a millionaire on paper. The day I moved into my new office, Caroline presented me with a framed photo of the two of us from my first company retreat 6 years earlier. "I knew then you would be sitting here someday," she said, though I did not expect it quite this soon. I had just settled into my new role when the whispers started. Caroline had been diagnosed with early-onset Parkinson's disease. Though she downplayed the severity, close observers could see the subtle tremor in her hand during presentations, the slight hesitation in her once fluid movements. "I am not going anywhere yet," she assured me during one of our private lunches. "But the board is already discussing succession planning." I was 34 years old, and for the first time, the possibility of the ultimate corporate achievement entered my mind. Could I become CEO of Logitech Industries before I turned 35? The thought was both exhilarating and terrifying. I threw myself into proving my readiness, taking on additional responsibilities without being asked, studying the company's financial position with renewed intensity, and developing a comprehensive 5-year strategy that addressed our most pressing challenges. 6 months later, Caroline called me into her office on a Friday afternoon. Her expression was unreadable as she gestured for me to close the door. "The board meeting ran long today," she said, pouring us each a glass of water with a hand that shook more noticeably now. "We were discussing my succession." My heart raced as I waited for her to continue. "I have decided to step down at the end of the quarter," she said, "and I have recommended you as my replacement." I sat perfectly still, afraid that any movement might dispel this moment like a dream. "The board has concerns about your age and experience," she continued. "They are considering external candidates as well. You will need to present your vision for the company at next month's board meeting." That night, I called my parents, feeling a rare urge to share my news with them. Dad answered, sounding distracted. "Can I call you back, Mel? We are just heading out to dinner with Ethan. He has got some promising leads on a new position, and we want to celebrate." The familiar sting of being an afterthought returned, but it no longer had the power to wound me deeply. "Sure, Dad." It was nothing important. The following month was a whirlwind of preparation. I worked with a presentation coach to refine my delivery, had multiple sessions with the company's financial advisors to strengthen my projections, and spent countless hours rehearsing answers to every possible question the board might ask. The day of the presentation, I arrived at the office 2 hours early, dressed in a custom-tailored suit that projected confidence and authority. As I waited outside the boardroom, I received a text from Daniel. "They would be fools not to choose you. But if they are fools, you will build something even greater elsewhere. Either way, you win." His words steadied me as I walked into the room to face the 12 board members who would decide my fate. For the next 2 hours, I presented my vision for Logitech's future, answering questions with conviction and clarity. When I finished, the board chair thanked me and said they would make their decision by the end of the week. 3 days later, Caroline called me into her office again. This time, she was smiling. "Congratulations, Melanie. The board has unanimously approved your appointment as the next CEO of Logitech Industries, effective the 1st of next month." At 35 years old, I had achieved what most executives spend their entire careers pursuing. That evening, as Daniel and I celebrated with champagne in our apartment, my phone rang. It was my mother. "Melanie, I saw the announcement online. Why did not you tell us? CEO of Logitech Industries? We had no idea you were so successful." In her voice, I heard genuine surprise mixed with something else. Pride, perhaps. Or regret. "It never seemed important enough to mention," I replied, the words carrying more weight than she could understand. The next morning, my assistant knocked on my door with an unusual expression on her face. "Miss Hayes, there is something you should see," she said, handing me a stack of job applications. These came in this morning for the VP of Business Development position. I flipped through the resumes absently until one name jumped out at me. Ethan Hayes. My brother had applied to work at my company, and judging by the dates on his resume, He had no idea his sister was about to become the CEO. The universe, it seemed, had a sense of humor after all. The 2 weeks between my CEO announcement and my first official day were filled with transition meetings, press interviews, and strategic planning sessions. Through it all, I kept returning to the resume on my desk. Ethan Hayes, applying for a vice president position he was objectively unqualified for, at a company he apparently did not realize his sister was about to lead. I debated how to handle the situation. The professional approach would be to recuse myself from the hiring process entirely, citing the conflict of interest. But a small, vindictive part of me wanted to see his face when he realized who would be evaluating his candidacy. "You seem distracted," Daniel commented one evening as we prepared dinner. "Is it the new position?" I showed him Ethan's resume, explaining our complicated history. Daniel listened without judgment, then asked the question I had been avoiding. "What do you want to do about it?" "I do not know," I admitted. "Part of me wants revenge for all those years of favoritism. Another part wants to prove I am better than that." "Those are not mutually exclusive," he pointed out. "You can meet with him professionally while still holding him to the same standards as any other candidate." I decided Daniel was right. I would interview Ethan myself, not out of spite, but because it was time to confront our shared past and establish clear boundaries for the future. The day before my official start as CEO, the HR director approached me with concern. "Ms. Hayes, we have several external candidates for the VP position, but the board is pushing for Jackson Williams from Apex Logistics. He has 20 years of experience and comes highly recommended." "I want to interview all qualified candidates personally," I replied, "including Mr. Hayes." I did not explain my connection to him. My first day as CEO began with a company-wide meeting where I outlined my vision for Logitech's future. The auditorium was packed with employees eager to hear from their new leader. As I spoke about innovation, integrity, and inclusive growth, I felt a profound sense of accomplishment. This was what I had worked for, sacrificed for, and persevered to achieve. After the meeting, my schedule was packed with briefings and introductory calls with key clients. It was nearly 5 p.m. when my assistant reminded me of my final appointment. "Your 6 o'clock interview is here. Ethan Hayes for the VP position." I took a deep breath, straightened the CEO nameplate on my desk, and told her to send him in. The door opened, and there stood my brother. At 32, Ethan still had the boyish charm that had always made him our parents' favorite. He was dressed in an expensive suit that I suspected they had purchased for this interview, just as they had bought his graduation suit years ago. For a moment, he did not recognize me, his eyes taking in the expansive office with its floor-to-ceiling windows and impressive city view. Then his gaze landed on my face, and I watched the blood drain from his. "Melanie," he stammered. "You work here." I gestured to the nameplate on my desk. "I am the CEO, Ethan, as of today." He sank into the chair opposite my desk, his resume folder clutched forgotten in his hands. I had no idea. I saw the announcement about a new CEO named M. Hayes, but I never connected. "I mean, what are the odds?" "Indeed," I replied coolly. "How is that MBA working out for you?" The question hung in the air between us, loaded with history. His resume showed 5 positions in 7 years, none lasting longer than 18 months. The prestigious Wharton degree that had cost me my car had apparently not delivered the success my parents had envisioned. "It is a tough market," he said defensively, "even with my qualifications." I leaned forward. "Let us discuss those qualifications. You have applied for a vice president position overseeing global business development. That requires extensive experience in international markets, strategic partnership building, and team leadership. Can you elaborate on your experience in those areas?" For the next 30 minutes, I conducted a strictly professional interview, asking the same challenging questions I would ask any candidate. With each question, Ethan grew more uncomfortable. his responses revealing significant gaps in his experience and knowledge. "Look, Mel," he finally said, dropping the professional pretense. "I know I might be reaching a bit with this position, but I figured with my background and, well, connections." "Connections?" I repeated, raising an eyebrow. He had the grace to look embarrassed. "I did not mean you specifically. I just thought my network from Wharton might count for something. At Logitech, we hire based on merit and demonstrated ability," I said. "Not connections or prestigious degrees without substance behind them." A flash of anger crossed his face. "That is rich coming from you. You always thought you were better than everyone else." "Not better," I corrected him. "Just unwilling to accept less than I deserved." He leaned back in his chair, studying me with new eyes. "You have changed. I grew up. Life will do that to you when you have to earn everything yourself." A tense silence filled the room. Finally, Ethan spoke again, his voice quieter. "Mom and Dad pushed me to apply here, you know. They saw the job posting and thought it would be perfect for me." The revelation hit me like a physical blow. "They knew I worked at Logitech?" He nodded. "Mom has been following your career online for years. She has a whole folder of articles about you." I think they're afraid to reach out. Especially Dad." I absorbed this information, unsure how to feel about my parents secretly tracking my success while continuing to focus their attention on Ethan. "That car," he said suddenly. "The one they sold for my tuition deposit. I never thanked you for that sacrifice." "It was not a sacrifice," I replied sharply. "It was a theft. I did not choose to give up my car for your education." He winced. "I know. I should have stood up for you then. I was used to them making everything work out for me." I remembered clearly the day they sold my car, how Ethan had sat there, uncomfortable but silent, accepting what was given to him at my expense. "Do you know what that car represented to me?" I asked. "Independence. Self-reliance. The proof that I could build something for myself even when no one believed in me." "They believed in you," he protested weakly. "They just thought I needed more help. And look where that got you," I said, gesturing to his resume. 7 years of bouncing between jobs, still relying on our parents to push you through doors." His face flushed with shame and anger. "Not everyone can be a prodigy like you. Some of us need support. Everyone needs support, Ethan. The difference is, I never got it from them, so I built my own network. I found mentors and colleagues who valued me for my contributions, not my place in the family hierarchy." He was quiet for a moment, then asked, "So what happens now?" "With the job, I mean." I considered my options. The vindictive part of me wanted to reject him outright, to let him feel the sting of failure that had been cushioned from him his entire life. But the leader in me, the woman who had fought her way to this office through determination and integrity, knew better. "I will treat your application fairly," I said finally. "Just like everyone else's. You will go through the same evaluation process as all candidates, and the most qualified person will get the position." Relief and something like respect flickered across his face. "That is fair." "More than fair, considering our history." As he stood to leave, he paused at the door. "For what it is worth, Mel, I am sorry about the car. And everything else. I think I always knew they favored me. But it was easier to accept it than to question it." "It is not worth much now," I replied honestly. "But it is a start." After he left, I sat alone in my office as dusk fell over the city, thinking about the strange circular journey that had brought us both to this moment. The car that had been taken from me to fund his future had inadvertently fueled my rise to a position where he now sought my approval. Life had a poetry to it that even the best revenge could not orchestrate. The day after my unexpected reunion with Ethan, I received a call from my mother. Her voice was tentative, almost fearful. "Melanie? Ethan told us about the interview yesterday. Why did not you tell us you were the CEO of Logitech?" I leaned back in my chair, looking out at the city's skyline from my executive office. "Would it have mattered, Mom?" You and Dad have always been more interested in Ethan's potential than my actual achievements. She was silent for a moment. That is not fair, Melanie. Isn't it? You sold my car, the one thing I had worked for and earned myself, to pay for his MBA. An MBA that he has barely used, while I worked my way through school and earned mine while working full-time. We did what we thought was best for the family, she said, using the same justification from years ago. No, you did what was best for Ethan, I corrected her. Like you always have. I could hear her taking a deep breath. Your father and I would like to see you. To talk in person. Would that be possible? Part of me wanted to refuse. To keep the emotional distance I had maintained for years. But another part, perhaps the more mature part, recognized that closure required confrontation. Fine, I agreed. But not at your house. We can meet for dinner next week. I suggested an upscale restaurant downtown, neutral territory where we could talk as adults. She agreed, sounding both relieved and anxious. Over the next week, I focused on my new role as CEO, implementing the strategies I had outlined to the board. In the evenings, I discussed the upcoming family dinner with Daniel, who offered balanced perspective. They cannot hurt you anymore, he reminded me. You are not that vulnerable teenager. Whatever happens, you have built a life they cannot take away. The night of the dinner arrived. I dressed carefully in a power suit that made me feel armored against whatever might come. Daniel drove me to the restaurant, but respected my wish to face my parents alone. Call me when you are ready to be picked up, he said, squeezing my hand. No matter how late. My parents were already seated when I arrived. Dad looked older than I remembered. His hair now completely gray. Mom was as perfectly put together as always, but her smile seemed forced, nervous. Ethan was not present, which was a relief. This conversation needed to happen without his complicated presence. You look wonderful, Mom said as I sat down. Very successful. Dad nodded in agreement. The CEO. I still can hardly believe it. Our daughter, running a Fortune 500 company. The pride in his voice sounded genuine, but it came 15 years too late. Let us skip the small talk, I said after the waiter had taken our drink orders. You wanted to talk, so talk. They exchanged glances, a familiar gesture that used to precede discussions about Ethan's needs. Dad cleared his throat. Melanie, we owe you an apology. Many apologies, actually. Starting with the car. I had not expected him to address it so directly. I remained silent, waiting. We convinced ourselves we were doing what was necessary, he continued. Ethan needed help, and you were always so self-sufficient. It seemed logical at the time. Logical to take something I had earned through 2 years of hard work? I challenged. To strip away my independence without even consulting me. Mom reached across the table, stopping short of touching my hand when she saw my expression. We were wrong, Melanie. Terribly wrong. We did not see how our actions would affect you. You saw, I corrected her. You just did not care enough to change course. I told you exactly how it would affect me, and you dismissed my feelings as stubbornness. Dad looked down at his plate. You are right. We prioritized Ethan's needs over yours, not just then, but consistently throughout your childhoods. We thought he needed more support to succeed. And how did that work out? I asked pointedly. He has had every advantage, every door opened for him, and he is still struggling professionally. Meanwhile, I have succeeded despite your lack of support, not because of it. We know. Mom said quietly, we have watched your career from afar. Every promotion, every achievement. We were too ashamed to reach out directly. Ashamed? I repeated. Or just uninterested until I became successful enough to be worth acknowledging? Dad flinched at the accusation. We deserved that. But please believe that we are genuinely proud of you, Melanie. Not just because of your title or success, but because of the person you have become. Strong, principled, determined. Those qualities developed out of necessity, I pointed out. Because I could not rely on you. The waiter returned with our drinks and took our food orders. The interruption gave me a moment to collect my thoughts. Ethan told me you have been following my career online, I said once we were alone again. Why did you never reach out before now? Mom looked genuinely distressed. We did not think you would want to hear from us. Every time we called, you were distant, brief. It seemed clear you had moved on from us. And you accepted that? I asked. You were willing to let your relationship with your daughter die because it was uncomfortable to address the harm you had caused? Dad shook his head. We were cowards. Plain and simple. It was easier to focus on Ethan, who still needed us, than to face the damage we had done to our relationship with you. Their honesty was unexpected. I had prepared for defensiveness, for justifications, not for this frank acknowledgement of their failures. Ethan has told us about the job interview, Mom said tentatively. He said you were tough but fair. I treated him like any other candidate, I replied, which is all anyone deserves in a professional setting. He also said he apologized for the car, Dad added. Did that mean anything to you? I considered the question seriously. It meant something that he finally acknowledged the unfairness. But an apology does not erase the years of preferential treatment or the message it sent about my value in this family. What can we do, Melanie? Mom asked, her voice breaking slightly. Is there any way to make amends? To be part of your life again. For the first time in years, I saw my parents clearly. Not as the all-powerful authorities of my childhood, but as flawed humans who had made serious mistakes in raising their children. The realization did not excuse their actions, but it helped me see a path forward that did not require either total forgiveness or complete estrangement. I do not know yet, I answered honestly. But this conversation is a start. I need you to understand that we cannot simply pretend the past did not happen. If we are going to have any relationship moving forward, it has to be built on honesty and respect, not obligation or guilt. They both nodded, relief visible on their faces at the prospect of a door left slightly open rather than firmly shut. As we ate our meal, the conversation shifted to more neutral topics. I told them about Daniel, about my vision for Logitech's future, about the home we had purchased overlooking the lake. They shared news of old neighbors, family friends, community changes. It was stilted at times, but not entirely uncomfortable. When the check came, Dad reached for it automatically. Allow me, I said, taking it instead. I can afford it. He looked momentarily startled, then nodded with something like respect. Of course you can. Outside the restaurant, as we prepared to part ways, Mom asked hesitantly, will we see you again soon? I will call you, I promised, not committing to a specific timeline. We can take small steps. As they walked toward their car, I noticed for the first time how my father's shoulders stooped slightly, how my mother held his arm for support. They were getting older. Time was marching on for all of us. Daniel was waiting around the corner as arranged. How did it go? He asked as I slid into the passenger seat. Better than expected, I admitted. Not perfect, but honest. That is all anyone can ask for, he said, squeezing my hand before pulling into traffic. That night, as we lay in bed discussing the evening, Daniel asked the question I had been considering since leaving the restaurant. What will you do about Ethan's job application? I sighed. The professional thing, which is also the right thing. He is not qualified for the VP position. But there is a middle management role in regional sales that would suit his experience level. If he wants it, he can interview for it like everyone else. Daniel smiled in the darkness. That is why you are the CEO. You know how to balance justice with mercy. The next morning, I called Ethan directly. Our conversation was brief but significant. The VP position requires qualifications you do not currently have, I told him directly. But there is a regional sales manager position opening next month that might be a better fit. You would need to interview with the department head, not me. His response surprised me. Thank you for the honesty, Mel. And for not just shutting the door completely. This is not a favor. I clarified. If you get the position, you will have to earn your place here, work harder than everyone else, and overcome the perception of nepotism. I understand, he said. And I appreciate the chance to prove myself on my own merits. It is time I stopped relying on Mom and Dad to smooth the way. As I hung up, I reflected on the strange circular journey that had brought us to this point. The car that had been taken from me had set in motion a chain of events that led to this moment of reckoning and potential reconciliation. Sometimes, loss is just the beginning of a much greater story. In the months that followed my family confrontation, a new equilibrium slowly established itself. Ethan interviewed for the regional sales manager position and, to his credit, prepared thoroughly and impressed the hiring committee. He was offered the job based on his own merits, with the understanding that he would be held to the same standards as any other employee. His first day at Logitech, I called him into my office briefly. "Congratulations on earning the position," I said. "But remember, in these walls, I am not your sister. I am the CEO. Your performance will be evaluated objectively by your direct supervisors." He nodded seriously. "I would not want it any other way. For once in my life, I want to know I have earned something on my own." True to his word, Ethan approached his new role with a dedication I had never seen from him before. He arrived early, stayed late, and asked thoughtful questions of his colleagues. The quarterly performance reviews showed steady improvement, and by his 6-month mark, he had exceeded his sales targets by 12%. My relationship with my parents evolved as well. We began with occasional phone calls, then progressed to monthly dinners, sometimes with Daniel, sometimes just the three of us. The conversations became less strained over time, though certain topics remained sensitive. 6 months after our initial dinner, they asked to see my office. I agreed, scheduling the visit for a Friday afternoon when the building would be less crowded. Mom gasped audibly when my assistant led them into the executive suite. The corner office with its panoramic city views, the conference room where industry leaders gathered at my direction. The respect evident in every employee's greeting as we toured the facilities all painted a picture of success they had never fully imagined for me. "This is incredible, Melanie," Dad said, genuine on his voice as he took in the scale of what I had built. "We had no idea." "You never asked," I replied simply. We ended the tour in my office, where I had arranged for coffee and refreshments. As they sat across from my desk, I was struck by the role reversal. Now they were the visitors seeking approval, and I was the authority figure. "We saw Ethan yesterday," Mom mentioned. "He seems different. More focused, more mature." I nodded. Having to earn his position instead of having it handed to him has been good for him. He is developing real confidence based on achievement rather than entitlement. Dad shifted uncomfortably. "I suppose we did him no favors by always smoothing his path." "You meant well," I acknowledged, softening slightly. "You wanted to protect him from struggle. But sometimes struggle is exactly what shapes us into the people we need to become." My mother's eyes filled with tears. "I am so sorry, Melanie, for everything, but especially for the car. We took away something you had earned, something that represented your independence and hard work. I do not know how you found it in yourself to succeed despite us rather than because of us." Her apology, so specific and heartfelt, reached a place inside me that had remained armored for years. I did not respond immediately, taking a moment to process the emotions her words evoked. "I succeeded because I had to," I finally said. "Because you showed me that the only person I could truly rely on was myself." It was a harsh lesson, but an effective one. Dad reached for Mom's hand. "We failed you as parents. We see that now. Too late to change the past, but hopefully not too late to be part of your future." "The past shapes us, but it does not define us," I said, echoing words my grandfather had once shared. "We all have choices about how we move forward." In that moment, I realized I had a choice too. I could cling to the justified anger of the past, or I could acknowledge that they were trying. however imperfectly, to make amends. I do not think I will ever forget how it felt to have my car taken away, I told them honestly. But I am ready to stop letting that moment define our relationship. We can build something new, based on who we are now, not who we were then. The relief on their faces was palpable. We did not hug or make dramatic declarations, but a subtle shift had occurred, a door opening to possibility rather than remaining locked on pain. As they prepared to leave, Dad paused at the door. Your grandfather would be so proud of you. He always said you had the drive to accomplish whatever you set your mind to. He believed in me when no one else did, I agreed. That made all the difference. After they left, I stood at my office window, watching the city below as workers streamed out of buildings to begin their weekend. So many stories. So many struggles and triumphs invisible to the casual observer. In the months that followed, I instituted a new program at Logitech, one I had been considering for some time. The Future Leaders Scholarship provided full tuition and mentorship to young people from disadvantaged backgrounds who demonstrated exceptional drive and potential. The first recipient was a young woman named Jasmine who had been working 3 jobs to save for college while supporting her younger siblings. When I presented her with the scholarship, the look of stunned disbelief followed by fierce determination on her face reminded me powerfully of myself at that age. This is not charity, I told her. This is an investment in what you will become. All we ask is that someday, when you are in a position to do so, you create opportunity for someone else. She promised she would, and I believed her. The cycle of support I had missed in my own youth would continue through her and the others who would follow. Ethan continued to excel in his role, eventually earning a promotion to divisional director based solely on his performance metrics. We maintained professional boundaries at work, but our personal relationship gradually healed as well. He became an enthusiastic supporter of the scholarship program, often volunteering to mentor recipients. My parents found their own way to make amends, establishing a small foundation in my grandfather's name to provide transportation assistance to working students. It was a symbolic gesture that acknowledged the specific harm they had done while trying to prevent others from facing the same challenge. As for me, the journey from that devastated teenager watching her car being driven away to the CEO of a Fortune 500 company taught me the most valuable lesson of all. True strength comes not from what is given to us, but from what we build ourselves, especially in the face of unfairness and obstacles. That old Honda Civic, purchased with my hard-earned savings and taken without my consent, had set me on a path I could never have imagined. The pain of that betrayal had forged a determination in me that no amount of privilege or advantage could have created. In the end, that old car did not just fund his future, as my mother had claimed. It fueled my determination to build something far greater than anyone expected, especially those who should have believed in me first. Have you ever had something taken from you that ultimately led to unexpected growth? I would love to hear your stories in the comments below. And if this story resonated with you, please like, subscribe, and share it with someone who might need to be reminded that obstacles can become opportunities when viewed through the right lens. Thank you for joining me on this journey, and remember, your future is not determined by what others take from you, but by what you choose to build for yourself.